Hello and welcome to the Lunatic Sports Podcast. I am your not usual host, normally co-host slash fake producer, John. And I do not have my good friend Tyler with me today because he has decided that he wants to go on vacation for the first time in his adult life. He says
The
it's to go
nerve.
take his kids, right, the nerve. He says it's to take his kids to Legoland, but I think it's really to take himself to Legoland. And, I'm not going to call him out for that. But I do have a different good friend with me today, Tom Franklin, the soccer zombie himself. How you doing, Tom?
Well, I got lost on the way to YouTube, and then I was like, well, I'll try to find the River City Ramble, and I got lost on the way there too, and I ended up here. So I guess this place is cozy enough. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going good. That's kind of very similar to how we got here as well.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so for those of you who are not followers of Tom's page on Twitter and YouTube, he runs a really cool channel talking about lower division soccer, both in the US and in Europe, and kind of just going out and looking for cool stories about promotion and fighting to stave off relegation, and have really come out with some really great videos on that. Um, you've done a lot of traveling this year, it's safe to say,
Yeah.
to go watch soccer. What's been your favorite trip so far?
Oh man, that's a good one. Starting right off
Hmm.
with a banger here. So
Yeah.
I honestly, there's no single trip for me that will beat my England trip in April.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
my first time that I ever not I mean forget going to England, forget going to Europe. It was my first time out of North America.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and it was a so the whole idea of this trip and what ended up, first of all, I'll just tell you what it ended up being. I ended up going to 5 football matches in 5 days.
Right.
But the whole idea was to go to one football match.
Okay.
So I know where you got me on camera here. Behind me to my
See it.
right is Jurgen Klopp's scarf that I bought in Liverpool, honoring his accomplishments there. And I am a Liverpool fan. I am a Red. I've been a Red since the late 2000s. And when I first heard "You'll Never Walk Alone," and 50,000 fans singing this
Right.
fairly obscure '60s song in unison, I'm like, I
Mhm.
got to be a part of that, and the rest is history.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And if you are a Man United fan that just clicked off this episode, thank you very much for listening. But didn't want you anyway. No, I'm just kidding. You're cool. But no, I always wanted to go to Anfield. I always wanted to check out Anfield. It's a real cathedral of football. It's a
Mhm.
classic stadium that they have built up and they've run. They've kept up to date, but it's still what the English call a proper football pitch in a lot of ways. And
Absolutely.
I and but the thing about buying tickets for Premier League games in England is you can't just go on SeatGeek and buy them.
Right.
They get bought up, they get snapped up really quickly. They have a lot of season ticket holders, and then the limited tickets that go available to the general public. They have a whole membership system, kind of like My
Right.
City Plus, and there's a long list for that. So the only real way that a lot of Americans and foreigners can get into Anfield, unless they know someone in Liverpool and know
Mhm.
someone that goes to the games already, is to buy hospitality
Mhm.
tickets, the bougie buffet
Mhm.
and the
Yeah.
padded seats and all that stuff. And I'm like, you know what, YOLO, I'm gonna do this. And I
Sure.
bought a hospitality ticket for Liverpool and Sheffield United, and that was going to be that. This was right as I was starting my YouTube channel in December, which I had
Right.
nothing really major planned for it, honestly. Like this
Yeah.
the whole success of it feels like honestly like an accident in a lot of ways. But but then my YouTube channel did kind of take off, as I mean, a lot of you that are, listening have watched my stuff, which thank you, by the way, for that. I really do mean it when I say that I really appreciate any support that I get, because I'm just one guy talking into a microphone, making videos that connect in a certain way to be entertaining. And like somehow it works for you guys. So thank you very much for that. But what made me interested in seeing more games was, number one, I was thinking, when's the next time I'm gonna be in England? And
Absolutely.
I'm gonna be there for a few days. So it's like, what other games are going on? Is Wrexham playing?
Mhm.
And so that was the second game I added. Wrexham had one game while I was in England, and it was out of all places, and this is right next to the Klopscarf, Doncaster Rovers.
Oh, all right.
Now, Doncaster Rovers, a club that you listening probably don't have any sort of connection, or like, who the hell are Doncaster Rovers, And there is a St. Louis connection, though,
Is
with
there?
Doncaster. There is. So there is a Doncaster fan named Chal. He goes by, his full name's Aaron Challoner, but he goes by Chal. He has a YouTube channel. And he, last year, during the inaugural season, adopted St. Louis as his MLS club.
Right, because you are allowed one per league. That is a known rule. Yeah.
That is.
I follow that rule. I follow that rule.
And depending on who you are, you're even allowed one team in each level of the pyramid.
I'd buy that.
You can't abuse it too much. Like, I consider myself a Liverpool and a Doncaster fan.
Sure.
And most people that I've interacted with in England are like, yeah, that's fine. So anyway, Doncaster, Chal. I saw Wrexham was going to be at Doncaster, and it's like, hey, I get to see a guy that I was starting to become a friend with, and it's a chance to see Wrexham. Of course, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that happened, and then I did a video on Reading FC, which is a very tragic situation that is still going on with their owners. They might be near a sale, but we've been down this road before. But I did a video on them on my Soccer Zombie channel because I came across a story, and this was just when I was doing St. Louis stuff. I came across a story of their owner trying to sell their state-of-the-art training ground to a rival club for like pennies on the dollar.
Right. Yeah, I think I saw that article too.
Yeah, Bearwood Park, and it blew my mind. How is this allowed to happen? So I did a video on it, and a bunch of Reading people fans were very appreciative that an American of all people was talking about their plight, because they're having trouble getting coverage on what's going on with them in England. It's kind of like, yeah, well, it's them's the breaks. That's kind of like the feeling among a lot of English fans. So I was like, okay, is Reading playing while I'm there? Because I want to go say hi, to Reading fans. Turns out they were playing in Bolton, and Bolton is very easy to get to from Liverpool. So that was 3. And then the 4th game was Man City and Aston Villa, which I only was able to go to because Liverpool, Sheffield United got moved. It moved up a day. And it moved to the off day that I had. I didn't have anything planned on this off day, but they moved it up a day. And so that opened up the 3rd, and Man City, Aston Villa, number 2 versus number 4. Yeah. Right. I mean, while I'm there, and Manchester's also very easy to get to from Liverpool. It's right on the train line. So, but I've rambled long enough here, but basically, I started doing vlogs with St. Louis City SC. Those did pretty well, to my surprise, honestly. And I'm like, again, I'm going to be in England. When am I going to go back to England? It's like, and I'm thinking, like, how am I going to time capsule this? How am I going to, because this is something I'm going to want memories of. And I could have, I could have just done pictures and, but I'm the type of guy, John, that if I go on vacation, I take a lot of pictures. They sit in my Google Photos forever, and I never look at them.
Yep.
It's a little different than it. Yeah, it is. And like, because like I grew up with the old photo books, the photo books that you lug around, and like, but you every now and then, like, I always get like hey, I'm gonna go look at my baby photos or look at my childhood photos. With the digital world, you don't get that. So it's like, how can I capture this? And it's like, you know what, an American fan vlogging English football, I bet you English fans might be very curious what a silly Yank has to say about their game. And then the rest is history. And that's kind of what caused my channel to kind of go, blow up a little bit, because those, 3 of the videos that I did really well. But it was the actual videos aside, going to England, it's a different culture, but familiar. Because everyone speaks English, and we're pretty familiar with English culture over here. So it wasn't anything unexpected, except that I was actually quite surprised how welcoming the English were.
Oh yeah.
They were actually very friendly, and like very like I'll never forget. I will never forget the first game, Reading at Bolton. I was at Manchester Piccadilly
Mhm.
station, and you to get to Bolton from Liverpool, you take the train from Liverpool to Manchester Piccadilly, and then you take a connecting train that goes northwest to Bolton. And so I'm at the station, and there's a good amount of Bolton fans there because Bolton's not far from Manchester, and I ran into a couple of Reading fans.
Mhm.
And I was wearing a Reading kit, and they were wearing Reading kits, and they were like, "Hey, come sit with us. We'll get." And they gave me a beer, and they were, they just were super, and they were like lifelong older Reading fans, and like they were very fascinated in what this American had to say about their sport, their club, and they were very interested in like some of the aspects of American sport too.
Mhm.
Like two things really fascinated them. Number one is the fact that we can just let teams move,
Right. Yeah.
uproot and pack.
Oh, who was it? It's MK Dons did that, right?
Yeah,
AFC Wimbledon
yeah.
before. Yeah.
That's the only time that's ever happened in England, and that's the only time that ever will happen in England
Yes.
because no one in England like that. No, I
No.
mean
No.
it kind of because the way clubs are in England, they are really a big part of the fabric of their community. Like they just
Absolutely.
are. They are interwoven into like Reading FC is Reading. Like
Mhm.
for instance, St. Louis City SC, it's an MLS club. They're owned by the Taylor family, and yes, we have very diehard supporters, but they're still like, as MLS treats their teams like bank franchises. So it's
Absolutely.
like or bank branches. So it's like I wouldn't say St. Louis City SC is like interwoven into the fabric. Like the only sports team that comes close to being like that is the Cardinals here in St. Louis. As
Yeah.
far as like being like part of the town's identity.
Right.
But like these clubs are a big part of their identity. Like when Reading goes to another town to play, and the Reading supporters come over, that's the town of Reading coming. That's not Reading
Mhm.
FC. Things like that. So like that was one thing that was fascinating. The number two thing that was fascinating that they talked about, and others talked about as well, was how we beat the Brits to the punch on women's soccer.
Oh
Like
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they were very, like a lot of Brits that I talked to were very fascinated at how we were able to grow the women's game over here,
Yeah.
and like they admit that it's catching up there. Like it's
Yeah.
their women's system is still very much like it reminds me a little bit of kind of like the like USL 1 or USL 2 in that it's
Mhm.
organized, but it's kind of like the Wild West a little bit.
Right. Right. I've been to exactly one game in Europe.
Really?
One, yes. It. I had kind of casually followed the sport before, and then I went to this game and I was like hooked from that point on. It was in Spain. It
Hmm.
and the only reason we got these tickets, so it was on a business trip for lack of a better term. But it was with my MBA class. Towards the end of it, I was in kind of a unique program, and one of the girls in the class, her niece had this huge crush on Ronaldo. So she was like, "Well, I really want to go watch Real Madrid play while we're in Madrid. Like,
Sure.
I can take pictures of it. She's gonna think it's so cool." So we went and we watched Real Madrid host Athletic Club Bilbao,
Okay.
which was a really interesting game. The game ended in a 1-1 draw. Ronaldo ended up scoring a late equalizer, and like the place just like went nuts, right? And I mean, it's a huge
Yeah.
stadium, right? So like the
Hmm.
kind of sound that they can generate is unreal. And I'm not a Real Madrid fan. That did not
Yeah.
make me a
No.
Real Madrid fan. Uh,
Sure.
Tyler already had claim on me for La Liga to become a Barcelona fan because that is like his team.
Yeah.
And he's who got me into the sport originally anyway. But yeah, you mentioned USL League One, USL League Two. You've done a lot of stuff with those leagues this year too.
Yeah, and the championships. So once I got back from England, like I came back, like, I really like the idea of grounds hopping, and just going from, ground to ground to ground, like not even to vlog them, but just to visit. And in America, of course, as you know, we're very spread out,
Yep.
and
Big country.
our public transit is terrible in this country. It just is. Well, at least city to city, anyway. It's just,
Right.
it's abysmal. So you have to drive everywhere. But I kind of like came back and thinking like, how can I make lemonade out of lemons? So the first game that I did once I came back from England, it was still in the month of April, and it was Indy 11. They hosted North Carolina FC, and the only reason I decided to go to this game, John, was because it was an off weekend for St. Louis City. It was a bye week.
Right.
So it was a rest. They didn't even have an away game. It was just they were off. So
Right.
it was like weekend, nothing to do. I looked at the schedule on FOTMob. Shout out to FOTMob, by the way.
Oh yeah, I use that app like 5 times a day at least.
Honestly, FOTMob is like a big reason why I'm so connected to the game of soccer now, is because before FOTMob, like it's so hard to keep track of all the leagues and like and, like around the world. I mean, it truly is a global game, and it's like sometimes it's hard to get your hands around it. Thank God for FOTMob. Please sponsor this podcast, by the way, FOTMob. If you're listening, we just gave you a great endorsement. But
all
no,
30
I was looking.
listeners.
All 30 of them, yes. Hopefully, one of them is a CEO of FOTMob. So I was looking at the schedule, and I was trying to find games that were like within a reasonable driving distance, because I wanted to do this trip, which I am going to be doing here in the next couple of weeks during Leagues Cup, or as I call it, the Summer Friendlies.
Yes,
and
Summer Friendlies.
Yeah, and Indy 11 was going to be one of the games, but then I saw on this weekend that Indy 11 was playing at Indy, and they were probably the closest team, like that was within driving distance of St. Louis. Indy's about 3.5 hours east, and so it was like, yeah, you know what? I'll take a road trip out there. Why not? It's fun. It'll be an adventure. This was like, I made this decision on, I think, Tuesday of that week. And so time passes, and by time I mean like less than 48 hours later, the mayor of Indianapolis announces that they are pursuing an MLS club and more or less not inviting Indy 11, who, by the way, for many years have actually been pushing for MLS themselves. Right. Now they're getting left a twist in the wind. And I'm like, okay, this is not just a meaningless indie game that I'm going to now. This is like, within 48 hours of the mayor dropping a nuclear bomb on their laps. So, I went there, and I went and hung out with the Brickyard Battalion, and, they were really good fans there. They drew, they draw about 10,000 at their stadium.
Which is phenomenal for championship level teams.
It is, and they're very passionate. They love the team. They love the badge, and their supporter section is no different than the North End. It's a bunch of people getting together, having a good shout, having fun together, and really, forming bonds. Which is I formed a lot of bonds in the North End. And going to city games, and no different there either. And so it's they're a very tight knit group, and yeah, they were very emotional about what was going on. They were still kind of raw about it, and I was glad to do a video on that, because this was a story that I felt needed to be told, and it needed to be told from the indie perspective. And it ended up being a fun game. They ended up winning 2-1. They had some late dramatics. I got to catch both goals right in front of me, and the Brickyard Battalion just going crazy, which I was invited to be up in the Brickyard Battalion. Like, I know the etiquette with being an out of towner. Like, you don't just crash the supporter section as an out of towner. But when I was in friendly terms with the Brickyard Battalion president, he invited me up there, and it was a good time. And thankfully the video did well, because it was a story that was kind of shocking at the time, and it still remains kind of a complex story. It's kind of evolved into almost a power struggle now between the mayor and the owner, and there's real estate involved, and it's a bit messy. And unfortunately, I think this is a situation where the battalion are kind of caught in the crossfire, so to speak. But we'll see what happens with that. But that was a fun trip, and I was just gonna say I went to Forward Madison recently. That was a fun time. The other really fun game that I went to was Union Omaha.
Right.
The U.S. Open Cup, they had a chance to host Sporting Kansas, those blue people from Kansas,
That's true.
in Omaha, and it was so. You may remember, John, that Union Omaha came to City Park last year.
I do. I was at that game.
Yep, I was there too for the Open Cup. I didn't meet any Union Omaha fans personally, but all I heard from other St. Louligans that did interact with them was how classy they were. Like, they were
Right.
very nice, they were friendly, very friendly, and I got to see that firsthand because the president of their supporters group, the Omaha Parliament, like, he actually picked me up from the airport and like took me out to
That is really
lunch.
kind. That is super kind.
Hunter Ringsmeyer is a top guy. Find him on Twitter. He's a really good guy. But like, one thing that he and another supporter was there at lunch. They were telling me that like, that was like, coming to City Park was like their chance to go to the big time. Like, it felt like a spectacle for them. It was easily the biggest game in their history at the time. Definitely in terms of attendance, but just like in spectacle. And they loved it at City Park, and the feeling that we had towards them was reciprocated by them, like
Right.
towards us. Like, I think I know there's a lot of Forward Madison fans in St. Louis, but I know if there's anything close to a sister club in the lower levels that St. Louis has, I would say Union Omaha is also a good contender for that. Honestly,
Right.
I will beat that drum.
Yeah, and it helps that they hate Sporting Kansas as much as we do. I mean, there's a natural kinship there, and we have, one of the other really awesome Twitter accounts is the Owl for City Twitter account. So we've got the owl symbolism going on and symmetry. Yeah,
and then there's another Twitter guy that's he's going to college in Omaha, but he's a City fan. I think it's City Enjoyer or something like that. Shout out if you're listening. By the way, I'm actually going to go back to Omaha on let's see, it is about 2 weeks from now. They're actually hosting Forward Madison, that's their derby for League One. That's their closest rival. They're kind of frenemies, but they get along, but they're rivals, quote unquote. But no, to your point, Union Omaha do not like Sporting Kansas. Like, I mean, there's some Omaha fans that are Kansas fans because that's like the closest MLS club. But
sure.
It is. But like, among the Parliament, they're not fans because, and the reason for that is because they played at Children's Mercy in a prior Open Cup match, and they did not get good treatment from KC fans. Not every KC fan, but like there was a couple KC fans that like attacked one of the Omaha fans and like actually
there's no place for that.
Then actually like hospitalized them. Like it was that
there's
bad.
No place for that sort of thing. Like anyway, you hear about that in like other sports too, like baseball. There in the early 2010s had a lot of
Los
that
Angeles.
going on.
Excuse me. Anyway.
Yeah, LA and San Francisco specifically, but like there's just no place for that sort of stuff.
There isn't, and it was, and that game was, if I hadn't gone to England, I would say that was my favorite trip because it was a true David versus Goliath story. I mean, Union Omaha plays in League One. They're going up against big bad MLS club that bullied them in the past, and they took Kansas to the distance. Like it was 1-1 in the 119th minute. And Kansas got the late go-ahead goal because I thought for sure I was going to PKs. It looked destined for PKs.
It really did.
Casey pulled it out.
Half of that game, Omaha played great, and
they were brave, and they were without their star striker. By the way, Omaha was without their star striker. He had broken his leg, so they did well without him.
Yeah, and I think the year before they played us, I think in 2022, they actually eliminated an MLS team, I think, from the Open Cup, if I remember right. I think it may have been the Fire. I'm going to have to look that up later.
I think it might have been, actually. I'm kind of looking it up as we speak. But, I felt so bad for Union Omaha fans at that game because it was like it felt like they could had they gone to PKs. I really truly think anything could have happened. It was a brave story, and again, this is a team that's 2 levels below MLS.
Right.
Now, granted, Union Omaha is kind of like the powerhouse of League One. Like
Right.
they are a very strong team. They're in fourth right now, but there's teams with games in hand, so like they're more or less still in first. Yeah, great fans there, and it's those stories there, John, that like I it really makes me love this game, and it's made me fall in
Mhm.
love with this game because, you know, there's two things at play here. Number one is that no game in this world connects people like soccer.
Mhm.
No game, like I think of all the friends that I've made at City Park, um, because of soccer. Um, and these are people that I would otherwise have no reason to really interact with. There's no reason I
Right.
would have any reason to intercross paths with. There is no reason that I should be friends with a YouTuber from Doncaster, England. And yet
Absolutely.
but yet, like, when I went over there, like, he picked me up from the train, he showed me around, he was there, me and him attended the game together, and like the whole time he was just geeked. He was absolutely giddy that this American that he met was over there and enjoying his club.
Mhm.
And it's a matter of pride. It is and his club got to have like a very memorable night because they beat Wrexham, that night
Right.
1-0, and it was a special night. And like he was so happy that me, newly minted Rovers fan, was there to see this,
Mhm.
see their team in the great lights. So there's that connectivity that you get with this game. But then the other thing is that there's always a game going on all year long.
Mhm.
MLS runs when it runs, but then when they're not running, the heart of the Premier League is going, the heart of the Bundesliga is going,
Right.
and then when those leagues are done, MLS is going.
Mhm.
So there's always a game going on, and that means there's always stories to tell. Because it is such a big game, it is such a global game, that there is no way that the current crop of content creators and reporters and journalists can cover everything.
Right.
There's just no way they can, because there's so many leagues, there's so many teams. There is hundreds of thousands of players that play right now that earn a
Mhm.
paycheck playing this game, and there's just so many stories out there to tell. And I wish I could tell more. I wish I had the ability to just be a nomad for a while and just go travel around and make YouTube videos and tell stories about San Luis de Quillota in Chile, and
Mhm.
their quest to make the Copa Libertadores, or going to see Right to Dream Academy in Ghana, or going up to the Faroe Islands. One of their teams is competing for a Champions League spot this year. I mean, that'd be a heck of a
Right.
story to tell. But that's the amazing thing about this game, is that there's a story. There's so many different settings. There's so many different stories to tell. And that's kind of why I do what I do on YouTube. And again, I wish I could do more, but I'm happy to do what I can do because it's fun to tell these stories. It's fun to research these stories and learn about them, because I'm learning about them as much as I
Mhm.
hope that you watching are learning about them. And then it also helps get back to the first point, and that is connecting with fans.
Right.
When I went to Bolton for the Reading match, like I sat in the Reading section. I had done Reading videos, and a lot of people, when I posted that video, like from Reading, were very happy with it. But so were Bolton fans. Like Bolton fans, like they flooded my comments on YouTube, and they're like, thank you so much for coming out and saying good things about our stadium, and just like, again, Bolton, England. Could you even point it out on a map? I'm not you necessarily, John, but like
Oh
you,
no,
the
I can't
listener.
point it out on a map.
Exactly. But yet now I know a bunch of people from Bolton that I wouldn't
Mhm.
have no reason to meet, and that's the beauty of the sport, John.
Right. I could pick out their badge because I have
Hmm.
played FIFA and I am a glutton, so I always for punishment. So I always start with a League Two team and try to work my way up.
And they were in League Two for, I think, for a hot minute there. They're in
Right.
League One now, but they
Right.
could have, they bottled promotion last year. But yeah,
Right. Yeah, I play them when I get to League One, but I always start in League Two. Um,
sure.
Speaking of some of the things that you kind of touched on, the Right to Dream Academy is coming to MLS next year with San Diego
Yeah.
FC, and I am really scared about what that team is going to look like. They've got some exciting signings already, and if they leverage that academy, because what I think they're going to do is I think they're going to leverage their academy in the way that NYCFC has not leveraged being a part of the greater city group. Um, and I think they're going to do very, very well for that. But I also think that that's really good for the league to have all these teams focused on development, and that's what
Yes.
we claim to be. And I think we're beginning to see that with some of these signings and movements that they've been making lately.
Well, Jake Girdwood Reich just signed with St. Louis, and he has made no ambiguity about how he wants St. Louis to be a stepping stone for
Mm-hmm.
Europe and the bigger leagues, which is fine. That's our current
Yeah, no,
role right now.
that's the role. Yeah.
It is. And, for those of you that, don't know what Right to Dream is or may have just heard about it in passing, Right to Dream Academy was founded in Ghana, I think a little over a decade ago by I think it was a German scout that scouted there for a club. And then he developed so many connections, but then he also saw like a lot of players like falling through the cracks because of course the economics aren't there necessarily. These kids, they don't get the proper education, they don't even get a proper diet.
Right.
And so he started this academy to not just discover players and guide them, but also give them shelter, food, education, beyond the pitch, and then of course develop their talents to eventually springboard themselves, hopefully into a very profitable career for them and their families. And it's been and that success really started when they bought into FC Nordsjælland in Denmark. Nordsjælland is one of the better clubs in Denmark. I would probably say they're probably top 3 or top 4 in Denmark. They're just outside of Copenhagen, and they have produced a lot of young African talent that has gone on to success elsewhere. Josh Yarrow is a Right to Dream player. He didn't go through Nordsjælland, but he did go through Right to Dream. Mohamed Kudus, from the Prem. I think he's who does he play for now? I think it's
I don't know
I'm drawing a blank on
anymore.
I forget where he's at now, but he's a really good player. He came from Right to Dream, and there's a litany of more that came through there, and that was kind of Nordsjælland was bought to be a springboard for Right to Dream, and then now with Right to Dream buying into San Diego, that's giving them a chance to not just, hey, that's another branch of our, where our academies in Denmark and Ghana can go to. Now they're going to tap into Mexico.
Yeah.
Because San Diego is phenomenal location. And you know what? Who doesn't want to play in San Diego? Like, have you been there? The weather is amazing. It is amazing to play, but it's also, geographically speaking, a lot of, young Latinos that live in Mexico, maybe, they don't want to stray too far from home, just hop across the border to San Diego and play MLS ball. I mean, and so I think Right to Dream, I think they're making some interesting moves. Like, Irving Lozano was an interesting signing. I think they wanted to make that big splashy signing. Sure. And I think Lozano, you could have done worse than Lozano. But then, to your point earlier, they're going to be a team that's going to be feared down the road, because if they're anything like Nordsjælland has been, and then their own academy in Ghana has been, that club is going to be a wonder kid factory over time. Mark my words. And it's going to be a lot of Latinos, but then it's also going to be just that academy knows how to find players and develop them properly. And if I was a casual fan that and St. Louis SC did not exist, and I was like, what MLS club would I pick? I probably would pick San Diego just because of Right to Dream. That's how much I like Right to Dream.
Yeah. No, I think anytime you are giving opportunity to people who otherwise don't have it, and in the US, even in the US, a lot of the kids, when we say don't have opportunity, it's not the same type of lack of opportunity that middle of nowhere Ghana experiences, right? But anytime you're giving underserved kids a chance at a better life, like I'm a huge fan of that. And I think I do hope that our academy is aspiring to be like that in terms of like success and in terms of what it means to the community. I think
Sure.
that they have shown that they're maybe not in terms of the success, but in terms of the community involvement. I think they have shown that that is going to be one of their pillars, like they've said, and that it's not just words, that it's something they actually mean to do. I mean, they just announced today that they're signing Simon Betcher on loan, right, from AC Horsens, right, who is
Sure.
not a local kid, but he did play at SLU, so he's kind of local, and bringing him back. And I think that that's, great that we have so many people from St. Louis already on the team or around the team to show, like, that this is a real pathway for you.
And
Um,
and 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 I did a video on Simon Betcher's signing on my YouTube if you want to like more in-depth, deep dive into his
Mhm.
career and who he's about. But I made the point in that it is nice, that while yes, we do have kind of a good thing going in finding these like under the radar
Mhm.
European talents. Although I wouldn't call Marcel Hartle under the radar, and I wouldn't necessarily call Toykert under the radar, but like someone like Klaus was kind of a forgotten man. Leuven was a little bit of a forgotten man. Players like that. Nilsson was kind of Joachim Nilsson was, always kind of like one of those like real steady Eddie types that was never a superstar, that kind of thing.
Right.
And, it is a good thing we're doing that over there. But like, this is a team that is based in St. Louis, a club that, a city that, of course, as we beat our chest over our, history with the game of soccer and the players that we produced. And it is good to see that we're starting to tap into that, with Johnny Klein and now Simon Betcher, who, just from a scouting perspective, don't expect a superstar from Betcher, but I will say I watched him when he was at SLU a lot, and he's a pure striker. He's not like a Thorson where it's like, you put him at the 9 and he's a little out of place. No, Betcher is a striker, and he's got a very strong personality in a good way. Like he's a high character guy, good intensity, good work ethic. In both ends, he's a good pressing forward. He's responsible defensively, something that the guy that he's replacing wasn't ever really. But we won't talk about that. We've talked enough about one Sam Adeniran, but Betcher is. But he's a good depth guy. I think Is he as splashy as like say a Nick Marcanic would have been? No, but I think with Marcanic, and this is just a hunch at this point. So Nick Marcanic, in case you know the name Marcanic, Anthony Marcanic is a left back. Nick Marcanic is his twin brother that it plays as a forward at Charleston Battery in the USL Championship. He is the leading goal scorer in the USL Championship with 18 goals this season. The second highest scorer has 11.
Yeah, he's playing in MLS next year. For sure.
I think he is. It's just, but you said it right there. Next year. Yeah. I don't think Charleston Battery wants to get rid of Marcanic yet because they are also making a run for, the USL Championship this year. They're a very strong side, and they could, and not only that, but I think they realize that if Marcanic continues playing well, his value is just going to go up and up and up and up and up and up, and someone's going to throw a big bag of money at Charleston Battery, and rightfully so. But getting back to the original point about local development, I do think that is going to come along. I mean, keep in mind, this club has only been playing competitively since 2022. So we're playing catch up, when it comes to our depth, when it comes to our academy. I think we're on the right path. I mean, our City 2 team is one of the best teams in MLS Next Pro. They were winning the Supporters Shield up until recently. And one of the players that is shining a light for City 2 this year is Mekhi Joyner, who made his debut on the big roster at Seattle in the second half. But he's a guy, he's 17 years old, came from Bloomington, Illinois. And, you were talking about Right to Dream and, how they like to, find diamonds in the rough that maybe, come from, less than ideal, situations at home. I don't know the entire circumstances of Mekhi Joyner's backstory, but I have heard that he also was, didn't have the best home life, sure. So like, and he wasn't like someone that like grew up in privilege or anything like that, so he was a discovery by St. Louis. And I know for a fact that the club is in in the front office is very high on him, not
Sure.
just as a player, but as a person. He's apparently one of those types that is he fights tooth and nail. He always is looking to improve. He's always in the analyst room evaluating his play, trying to figure
Sure.
out how he can get better. I've said it before on Twitter, and I'm gonna say it again now. Mekhi Joyner, remember the name.
Absolutely. And I think we've hit kind of our time limit here. So to kind of wrap it up, what I think it's really all about is not just for us as fans, but the team in general, but it's about connectivity, right? It's about community.
Yes.
And do you know someone who is not about community?
Who?
Stan Kroenke, because he
No.
just screws over every city he goes to. And so with
Well,
that,
he's
Stan
about-
Kroenke, we hate you. Good night.
He's